Hey there, Seb the Realtor here, and in this video I'm going to explore the pros and cons of selling your home versus renting it out. If you're thinking of moving out of the area but you're on the fence as to whether or not you should sell it or rent it out, then you definitely want to watch this video. Alright, well before I get into all that, would you do me a favor? Would you mash that subscribe button right there and subscribe to my YouTube channel? And don't forget to click that little bell to make sure that you get a notification every time I put up a brand new, fun, fact-filled video, kind of like this one. Alright, well, I talk to a lot of Bay Area homeowners who are considering leaving the area, and one of their biggest questions is, should I sell my house now or should I rent it out and maybe sell it later? To help those folks, I'm going to dive into the pros and cons of selling and the pros and cons of renting it out. So without any further ado, let's get started with the pros of selling a home. So obviously, the big pro in selling your home is that you do get a major liquidity event. You will probably walk away with a tremendous amount of money if you are a long-term Bay Area homeowner, and that will give you a tremendous amount of freedom and flexibility. You could buy a house cash for somewhere, you could travel on a cruise ship for the rest of your life maybe, you could fund several college educations and get a house and go on a cruise somewhere around the world. So that clearly is the biggest pro of selling your house, and if that is important to you, then selling your house may be your best option. And another great thing about selling your house versus renting it out is that it really eliminates so much responsibility in your life. Maybe you've come to the point in your life where you had your kids, you raised them, you have a long career, and you've been shouldering a lot of responsibility for 30, 40 years or more, and maybe you're just done with it. Maybe you just want to, be footloose and fancy free, and having a rental property which you manage from a distance, that does not necessarily give you the kind of freedom that you may be looking for once you leave the area. So another great reason to sell versus renting it out is that you won't have any tenant issues. And I talk to a lot of people who have tenants, and there are, in fact, a lot of nightmare stories out there. Frankly, there are a lot more nightmare stories than happy tenant stories, and that could be because when people have happy tenants, they don't really talk about it, but when they have a nightmare, they always mention it. But nevertheless, there are some significant issues with having a tenant in your life, even if you don't live in the property. So one of the other nice things about selling your home as an owner-occupant versus selling it as an investment is that if you live in your house for 2 of the past 5 years before you sell it, you may be able to get up to a $500,000 capital gains exclusion if you are 2 owner occupants who live in the property. So that's $500,000 tax-free gain. That is a significant amount of tax-free income to get. And if you do end up renting that property for longer than 3 years, you won't have lived in it for 2 of the past 5 years, which means you will lose that capital gains tax exclusion. So that's something very important to keep in mind. All right, so now how about the cons of selling a home? Obviously, one of those is potential rental income. I mean, rents here in the Bay Area are very high. It could be, if you have a 3-bedroom house, you could be renting it out easily for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, maybe dollars more a month. Who knows? So there's quite a bit of potential rental income that you could be getting if you do rent it out and do not sell it. So that's one thing to consider. Obviously, if you have a large mortgage, you might not be getting that much rental income, but nevertheless, you might be getting some, and it could be something that comes in very handy for you. But I think maybe perhaps one of the very biggest reasons that people do not sell their homes in the Bay Area after they move and want to rent them out is because they fear the loss of potential appreciation. I mean, if you have a house that's worth $2 million and it's going up 5% a year, what is that? It means it's going up $100,000 a year. That's quite a bit of passive equity increase for not really any extra work. So a lot of people have a hard time giving up that kind of increase to their net worth. So that's a very important consideration. Another con against selling your house is that there will be some significant transaction costs when you go to sell your house. You'll obviously have to pay that commission, closing costs, repairs, and of course you may actually have capital gains tax to pay. I do have a great recorded webinar on my YouTube channel about capital gains taxes, and definitely worth checking out if you do have a significant amount of capital gain, because some people will end up paying $1 million literally in capital gains tax. So that's a very important consideration as well. But I think that maybe one of the biggest reasons that people do not sell their house and choose to rent it out is because they're worried about the loss of ties to the area. I mean, a lot of people are like over and done with the Bay Area, ready to get out of town, but so many of them really, they still love the place, right? They have friends here, they have family here. There's a lot of things they like about the Bay Area, and they don't want to lose their ties to the area, because what if they want to come back? What if something changes? What if they don't like where they go to? So a lot of people just don't want to sell their homes for that reason. And if you are among those people who you're not quite sure that you want to never come back to the Bay Area, then I strongly advise you to think about not selling your property and continuing to rent it out for the long term. All right, so now let's talk about the pros of renting out a home. There are obviously a lot of benefits to renting out a home, like having someone else pay down your mortgage. I mean, like if you do carry a mortgage on your home, and a lot of people did refinance when rates were super low and took out some cash, so you may have a mortgage you want to have paid down. A tenant can do that for you. They can pay your mortgage, they can pay your tax, and they can also pay for some other stuff too. I mean, perhaps you're going to get $1,000, $2,000 or $3,000 or more or month in free cash flow as a rental property, and that may be very good for you depending on where you are moving to and what you're going to be doing with the time you're going to be spending outside of the Bay Area. And again, if you do not sell your property and you do rent it out, obviously you're going to get a lot of appreciation over time. As I mentioned, 5% on a $2 million house, that's $100,000 a year. So while somebody is paying down your mortgage, so you're lowering your debt, you're also getting a increase in the overall sale price as well. So you're building equity both ways by paying down the mortgage and getting that appreciation. That's obviously tremendously beneficial for long-term wealth accumulation. Also, if you do rent out your property, you will have other tax benefits as well. Like you can take advantage of tax deductions for, mortgage interest deduction, property taxes, repairs, maintenance, that kind of stuff, which some of that stuff you can't take as a deduction as a homeowner, but as an actual investor where your rental is a business, you can deduct those essentially as business expenses. But I have to say, you do need to talk to a CPA or tax professional about that, because I am not in any way a CPA or a tax professional. And as I understand it, there are significant tax deductions that go along with having a rental property. All right, another great reason to rent it out and not sell it is that you keep your options open. Just because you convert it to a rental doesn't mean you can sell later. I mean, you can certainly sell it later, but also the other big one is that you can move back. If you need to move back, you can do that. Or maybe you have kids who, they grew up in the Bay Area, they left the Bay Area, they went to college in, I don't know, who knows where, and then they want to come back to the Bay Area. And obviously, Bay Area is very expensive, and if you don't sell the house, they could come back and live in their old house. Maybe they continue to rent from you. Maybe they inherit it maybe many, many years from now when you pass away, and then they inherit your low property tax basis as well. So by not selling your home, obviously you are keeping a lot of options open. All right, so now let's talk about the cons of renting out a house. Obviously, those are significant as well. I mean, I mentioned it already. The tenant issues, good tenants are great, but it's not always easy to find good tenants, and you can find tenants who cause you unending amounts of grief by, for instance, not paying the rent, or not paying it on time, or damaging your property, or inviting their friends to come and live with them, and the neighbors complain, they take up parking, they ruin the landscaping. I mean, there's all kinds of possible issues you could have with your tenants, and it seems like most homeowners, do have some issues at some point with their tenants, and it can be certainly a headache and a hassle. So again, you will have to continue to maintain that property. I mean, if you do have tenants, actually, you don't want tenants who never tell you about a problem. A lot of tenants, they say, I don't want to tell the landlord about, this leak that's happening here, or, some rot I see over there. They don't want to tell you because they don't want you to come there, inspect the property, get in their business, do some repairs, and then maybe raise their rent. So a lot of times these tenants won't inform you about like deferred maintenance issues that are actually causing damage to your property. So whether the tenants themselves are actually like breaking the property themselves, breaking doors and windows, or the landscaping, or the paint, or the finishes, who knows what they may be doing. Also, as a landlord, you will have vacancy periods, right? So a lot of tenants, are not going to stay there forever. They will only be there for some time before they move out. And when you do have vacancy periods, obviously you're not going to be getting rent during that time. And that may be pretty uncomfortable for you if you do end up having 2, 3, or 4 months, let's just say, of vacancy. Perhaps between tenants you are working on, putting the property back into a more, a better condition where you can get a higher rent. You may have that loss of cash flow, and that may be uncomfortable for you as well. And lastly, I think a con of continuing to rent out the property is that you do have, some legal obligations. You are responsible for these tenants in some way. You have to make sure that they have like a safe property in which to live. You do have that covenant with the tenants that you have to give them a livable property. And also you have some liability that continues to go on as a homeowner. And those are serious obligations, and obviously they may not come up on a day-to-day basis, but they certainly are still out there for the long time. So those are my pros and cons of selling a home versus renting it out. And obviously it's a complicated formula, and there is no right or wrong answer in many cases. But I would just wrap up by saying is that the future is very hard to know. It's really hard to know what's going to happen with home prices. It's going to be hard to know if you're ever going to want to come back to the Bay Area or never return. The only thing that we really know about is right now, today. So rather than speculating about what the future will bring, I always tell my clients that you want to focus on the here and now, because that's the only thing that you can really be certain about is what's going on today. I always tell my clients that, it's really hard to predict the future. Actually, if you're talking about the future, you're basically just speculating or guessing. And my advice is, if you're trying to decide to sell your house or to rent it out, just look at what's going on today. Just look at your current situation and make an evaluation of where you are at today, and don't try to guess what's going to happen in the future with home prices or tenants or mortgage rates or any of that stuff, because all of that is really unknowable. Just go with what you know today, and it will probably be a great decision. And another thing I tell my clients is that any decision can be the right decision or the wrong decision. It could be the right decision to sell, it could be the right decision to rent it out, or the wrong decision to sell or to rent it out. Because what really matters is what you do after you make that decision. Like if you do have that big liquidity event, you sell the property and then you invest it in some, Ponzi scheme, and you lose it all, then obviously it will turn out to be that was a bad idea to sell that house. Whereas if you do sell that house and you invest in the next artificial intelligence stock that goes up 50 times in 2 years, then obviously best decision you ever made, right? All right, well, that's all I have for this video. I do hope that you have enjoyed it. Of course, you can call or text me anytime. My phone number is here at the bottom of the screen. Just feel free to shoot me a message or give me a call, and we can, sort of do the pros and cons of selling versus renting it out. And I know there are some particular nuances probably to your situation, and I'm happy to help you figure out what would be the best situation for you at this time. All right, well, that's all I have for this one. Thank you so very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, if you got any value out of it, I'm guessing you might also want to watch some of these videos over here. These are some of the most popular videos here on my YouTube channel, so please do check those out. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate it. All right, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so very much for watching, and please stay tuned.